Recording in progress.
I will accept we are being silly. So,
Yeah,
so if I get fuzzy, just let me know and I'll just do that. Get really close.
perfect.
I'll talk really quiet.
Perfect.
Everybody will know I have a really big ego.
So let's do this, right? This is how I like to start things off. State your name.
Okay, my name is Andrea De La Madriz.
What is your profession?
I am a movement educator.
Yes, you are. And you are the Dragoness. At least for me, you are. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you tonight is because I wanted to know your story about how you became such a badass. Because I know like snippets of it, I know like little like parts of chapters, but I don't know the book. So I want to know some of the book tonight. It doesn't have to be all of the book, but I want to know some of like the key chapters in the book of the Dragoness and how you became to be, you know, who you are and your perspective and how you approach the world and how you approach wellness. So let's do this. Start me off at the beginning. Were you born in Florida?
I was not.
Okay.
I was born in South America, Caracas, Venezuela, is where I'm originally from. I arrived in Florida when I was 3 years old. So I've been in the United States almost all of my life, minus the first 3 years. And I've lived in Florida my whole life. So I have never lived anywhere other than this, which you can like kind of say it's South America-ish in a way. Yeah.
There's there's elements of South America there
Yeah.
in Miami for sure. Um, okay. So at what point do you start getting into movement? Because I picture you as a dancer as a child. Am I wrong?
Yeah. So when I was about 14 years old, I was in a strip mall with my mom and I don't remember, she was going to go get something at a store or something. And we walked by Step Aerobics Studio. And Step Aerobics was huge, in like the 80s and early 90s. And I really wanted to do Step Aerobics. And so she bought me some classes and she would just drop me off there. And so it literally began. I had really skinny legs as a kid. And so I had like complex about my knees being like knobby knees. So I really wanted to kind of build up my strength in my legs. And every time I would see people doing aerobics and step aerobics like the Jane Fondas of the world, and they always had beautiful limbs, beautiful legs. And so I was like, oh, this is the way. So I really actually started on in a step aerobics class at a studio when I was very young, 14, 13 or 14 years old.
Oh, okay. So that's actually that's young, but that's not like before 10 young.
No.
Like I imagine that you were uh quite a ballerina as a child. But
Yeah.
see that's why we're discussing parts of the book, key chapters.
Which is still in progress, by the way. I don't think it'll complete this book.
Well, whose book is ever complete until like your last breath, really. So, okay, so in your teens, you get into step aerobics and whatnot, and what at what point do you kind of find yourself interested in yoga?
So I was in my early 20s and I was what you would consider a gym rat. Like I really loved going to the gym. I really loved to like take spinning classes. I really enjoyed like trying to mold my body into like a physical shape. I was very, I felt like I was really like primed in my 20s. We all go through these, well, maybe not everybody, but I did. I was like, I'm a badass, I'm going to the gym. I've got all these muscles and I was never like competitive, muscular in competitive ways, but I felt like I was very strong. And I was working at the time when I started yoga, I was working at a PR agency. My sister actually worked with me. She was very young. She's 10 years younger than myself. And she was dating a guy who needed space from her after work. And so he bought us a yoga class at a yoga studio near our job. who now actually they're married, so that became her husband.
Okay.
So that's a funny, like, cool loop that he was the one who like, and pushed me through the door of this world. And I remember going to the studio and being very kind of pompous and saying, "Oh, I want the hardest class because I'm really in shape. Like I am amazing and I need the hardest class. I can't go in there and do like contemplation of universe kind of bullshit. Like I want to be suffering. I want to be sweating." And so they're like, "Okay." So they put me in an Ashtanga yoga class, which is the most traditional yoga practice you can practice here in the West. And I remember throwing out my yoga mat next to this old woman, Jamie, if you would have seen her. She was like a fairy. She had like this really long, silky white hair and braids, two braids to the side, really long. And she was in a full leotard with slouchy socks, leg warmers, which I love now, by the way, and everything. And I judged her. I was like, look at this bitch. Like, she's going to be competing next to me. I'm so elite. Like, I'm going to blow this woman out of the water. I'm going to make her feel so old and she's going to feel so bad about herself. And within the first maybe 5 or 10 minutes of the class, my arms were shaking, my legs were shaking. I couldn't find my breath. They were counting in Sanskrit. I was like, I took the hardest class. It was a full primary series. They were contorting their bodies in ways that I was like, what is going on here? The room was super quiet. And that was really uncomfortable for me because I was coming from like a gym environment where it's like the noise and everybody, this externalized thing. And this was like a totally internalized thing. So it was really uncomfortable. And then I had this like 70-year-old woman next to me who looked like she was floating when she was practicing. And it destroyed me. It destroyed my ego. And my teacher afterwards, she became my teacher for a while, actually. She came up to me after class and she's like, "How did you enjoy the class?" I'm like, "I fucking hated it. I will never be back here again." And she's like, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow." And I walked out and I was like, what is she like on crack? I told this woman's like crazy. I'm never coming back. I drove the whole way home. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I
What a
went to,
line.
yeah, I went to bed mad. I'm like, so I started making excuses. I was like, "Oh, I just had a bad day. I wasn't hydrated. I didn't eat. I'm going to go back there. I'm going to go back there and show that old lady and that teacher like what I've got." And so I went back the next day. And then I went back the next day. And then I went back the next day. And within a month, I had already started about 5 days a week. I was going straight to the studio after work because I wanted to master something that you can never master, but I was in that mindset, right? And so I'm like, I'm going to conquer this. Like, this is conquering me, but I'm going to conquer it because it can't be this hard. Why is this so hard? And so I was just showing up. And then I canceled my gym membership because I wasn't going to the gym anymore. And I was just going to this yoga class. And then it's became this amazing kind of um, discipline where little by little I was moving and breathing and doing the practice. And then I found like a connection to the breath. And then I realized that I was kind of contemplating the way that I was behaving in the world, how I was perceiving things and people, my judgmental self, not only with others, but also very harshly towards myself. And so it became this kind of window within to kind of look into my house a bit and see how dirty it actually was in there. And I couldn't believe what an asshole I was. I was like, God, I'm not a very good person. Um, and I tell this story to people, and people are like, "I think you're very harsh on yourself." But compared to the person I am now, I look at that version of myself and I'm like, that's like the very judgmental, broody, harsh, toxic version of me that once existed that no longer exists. That if she knew I existed, she'd be very disappointed in this outcome. Like she'd be like, "What happened to you?" you know, like, where did you go wrong? You're supposed to be mad at the world. Yeah.
So, okay, you had something to prove.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Because and you had something to prove to yourself above all, right? At a deeper level. And so about how many years is it that you're doing this until you decide I want to be a teacher?
So I was practicing. I started when I was 22 and I became a teacher when I was 27. So I practiced for quite a bit of time before I actually decided. And it wasn't because I sought it out. One of my teachers told me that I should teach. They're like, you've been doing this for a long time. I think that you should share the gift with others. You have a presence when you come and practice. You have a strong practice. You're very disciplined. And so I decided to do it. When I did it, there wasn't really a certifying body back in that time. The certifying bodies didn't exist back then, like Lululemons didn't exist back then. It was just kind of starting to get very entrenched in the Western world, these types of movement practices. And so um, I did a lot of study work with my individual teachers before I actually went and I did a 200 hour. And then I did multiple 200 hours after the first 200 hours. I can't even tell you how many like yoga certifications I've done, where I've actually learned a lot of different things. Each time you do it, you learn something different, which is really cool. But so I started really teaching when I was 27. Um, and it was kind of a hobby. It wasn't anything that I was very serious about making into a career. At the time, I was still really working in public relations, and actually had been doing concerts before. I was working with a concert promoter, and then I got into the public relations, and that kind of lasted for a while. And so I didn't become a full-time yoga teacher until I had my daughter. So when I had my daughter in my early 30s, my first daughter, was when I was like, you know what, I really want to continue this path, and I want to build this so that I can be a full-time mom and still kind of create something in the world and, earn some money and, start a business. So that's really where it started to flourish in that way.
So about 5 years in, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go be, I'm gonna go learn as much as I can, right? And would you would you take that many certifications over again? No. Because I mean, I understand when you say like every certification you learn something because I've done a ton of certifications too. And it's true. You always learn something, but you're learning shit every day. Regardless of like where you're at. It's all about mindset and how you look at things, how you perceive things. Um so take me to when you're when you decide, okay, you have your first daughter and you start taking it more seriously, like this is like a path for me. And this is kind of what I want to put out in the world. And also you're kind of saying to yourself, this is kind of like a legacy that I kind of want to, put a little stamp at this point in my life and leave this as part of who I am. So, because understand like the, the path you walked up until this point. When you say that you were teaching full time, what's full time? Like how many classes a week? Because I assumed like you need your own practice as well, and you started taking care of your daughter, and then your next daughter, and then your next daughter. So you know, how did you balance it all?
Um, it was really hard. I think that that's where the most growth, and maybe not the most, because I'm continuously like my evolution in the last since COVID has been probably my most exponential evolution. But once you become a mother, you want to be able to spend as much time with your children as you can. And a lot of women don't have that opportunity, and I was like hell bent on having that opportunity. And so during the day, I was with her. And then when my husband at the time would come home, that's when I would go teach. So I would teach really early in the morning prior to him going to work. And then I would come home and be with her. And then when he came home, I would go and teach. So I was teaching a class in the morning and then maybe like a 6 o'clock, a 7 o'clock, and an 8 o'clock, Monday through Friday. And I started actually working at CrossFit because what I wanted to do was work with as many bodies as I could. And I knew that those were the most wrecked bodies. And so for me, the tangible learning was to be able to work with the people that resisted the practice because it was an internalized practice and they're very used to an externalized experience. So right there, I was like, this is going to be a challenge. Um, so I wanted that. And I also wanted to work with people with a lot of limitations that didn't realize that they had limitations. because the practice kind of unfolds in a way that it shows you everywhere that you have created some form of damage or some didn't practice ahimsa or self-care to the body because you were in performance mode or in ego mode or, just kind of like wearing and tearing, which all of us have done at some point in our lives if we're movers. And I knew that the more people that I worked with that were in these states, the better I would be at working with people of like, every age, every ability, all of the injuries. I wanted to be able to help everybody. I didn't want to just work with bendy people at yoga studios that were already kind of exposed to that.
Right, right. And
Working in
I
class.
I I can relate because uh like when I was teaching mace, I wasn't teaching mace at yoga studios or anything like that. I was teaching mace at a strongman gym, another like kind of cross two. The other gym was kind of CrossFitty. Um, so it's it's funny that you took such a hardcore yoga practice into a CrossFit. How long did you do that at CrossFit or CrossFits, we'll say?
So when Sophie was born, I taught at CrossFit. There was two main gyms that I worked at, and I would talk people into the practice, and they would begrudgingly come, and it was a lot of fun because everybody was a struggle bus, and so that was fun for me because all these people could lift and push and do all of these things, but then they would do downward dog, and it was like babies on a mat crying about their bodies. That was really fun for me, kind of like to break that down because it was the experience I had. So I was like seeing, it was like a reflection of myself when I first started my yoga practice. And I realized like the potential of these individuals. So I worked there until about Sophie was maybe 3 or 4. And I randomly walked by a yoga studio one day and they had just opened. And I was like, oh, this is a new studio. Let me just pop in here and see if I can get on the sub list, just on a whim. And the owner happened to be at the front desk. And I was like, hey, I was wondering if I could get on your sub list. I'm a yoga teacher. This is the modality that I teach. I've been teaching at CrossFit gyms. I have this amount of experience. I can send you my resume. And there was like something about me that vibed with her. I was with my kid. She was a mom. She saw that I was like eager to like get into a different space. And she didn't have that modality. And it was hard. It's even hard now to find like Ashtanga yoga teachers that actually will teach that more traditional discipline practice because it's hard for people to want to do that practice. Everybody wants to do like a more free flow vinyasa style class with the music and the fun. And Ashtanga is very kind of like, this is the way and this is the only way and you're going to fit inside this box and this is what's going to break you open and kind of set you free within yourself. Nobody really wants to do that work, right? It's hard. So she's like, I don't have a teacher. How about, yeah,
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 very hard.
it's hard. So she's like, how about I just give you the 6 p.m.? And I couldn't believe it because it's prime time. And I was
Yeah.
like, really? Like, you would give that to me? And she was like, yeah, I want to give you a chance. And so it was the chance received in that moment that kind of pulled me into a studio. And I was able to, for 10 years before COVID, I was in that studio working programs, teaching other teachers to be teachers, teaching people how to adjust bodies, doing clinics, teaching anatomy courses. Like my whole kind of rooted movement of ability to teach people how to move and teach other people how to teach people to move was in that space. So I have a lot of gratitude for that yoga space and that opportunity that was given to me because it's rare. A lot of people that have studios want to have teachers with tenure and that have an audience and that will bring people through the door. And this woman was just like, yeah, hey, like come in and do your thing. And it ended up being a really beautiful experience for me there. So it was good.
It sounds like it. Um, so I just want to take like a pause of, can you explain the difference between Ashtanga yoga and other yoga real quick?
Yeah. So Ashtanga yoga so all yogas come from the same place,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Your practice. It comes from Krishnamacharya was like the original like master of yoga, and all of the yoga masters that came from India they learned from this original teacher. So he was like the guy. And this guy would go to, you know, the all of the palaces, and he would teach, you know, the people in political power. He was like a high to do guy. And these kids, they were kids at the time, would go and they would learn from him. And these guys then became the ones that brought the yogas to the West. They had Western students that would go to India, and then they taught them to teach here in the United States. I think Hollywood actually was like, California was one of the first places where it kind of expanded with some, you know, Hollywood elites, go figure.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
they were the ones that could afford it, right?
Yeah.
So, um, so the practice of Ashtanga is really rooted in the teachings of Krishnamacharya, but it was Pattabhi Jois who put a system together, right? And there's lots of different systems, and this is just one of the systems. And he has its 6 series of practices that you do, and they're all linked together. So if you practice this traditional practice with me, I'd be like, okay, Jamie, we're going to learn this practice. You and I are going to work together as taught. You can teach a guided class, but the best way to learn would be my source style, which is what I taught at this yoga studio. So it would be like a 2-hour window of practice. You roll in whenever you want to come within those 2 hours, just as long as you have enough time for your individual practice. You roll out your mat, and you, little by little, I go teaching you the sequence one-on-one, which is really beautiful because the whole room is moving at a different pace. So this is like this really organic experience in this place where everybody is moving in their own practice, which is the same practice. So if they're all practicing primary, you might start 15 minutes after, right? So that person's already 15 minutes in front, but you're doing the same rhythm of practice as they are. And then I'm slowly teaching you one by one. We're adding an asana, we're adding an asana, we're adding an asana, and you repeat it until you memorize it. And then I go to start watching the way you move and how you breathe, and I go adjusting your body. And I go telling you like this, and tilt your head this way. And how does that feel? And open up your breath. So it's a very individualized practice between teacher and student. You get to learn little synchronicities in the person, their little OCD, you know, tendencies, the way that they are perceiving themselves, how harsh they're being, how they walk in, how they leave the room, all of these little nuances that happen that don't happen in a regular group class where everyone starts at the same time. And it's always a different sequence in vinyasa. It's always a sequence that a teacher puts together. There might be some things that are the same, but it's flow-based, which is wonderful, but it's not structured in the same way as always hitting the same blueprint, right? So if you're always hitting the same blueprint, your body will open up to that blueprint. And so one day you hit a asana that's really challenging, and you struggle in it for a while. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in the posture, and you're like, oh, like my body now has adapted and opened up to this posture. And there is this like beautiful feeling of triumph in that, right? There is this feeling of I worked really hard towards this, and here is my body accepting this movement and pushing me forward to the next movement, or an ability that I have gained over time with the discipline and the work that I've put into it. And so there is a lot of that. And because it's so quiet and because you're really working with yourself, there's a lot of introspection in it. There's a lot of like internalization. There's a lot of understanding where you are in the moment, from that daily moment to your whole history of what has brought you to that moment. And it's always this contemplation. There's always like, I mean, I practice every day, whether it's a full practice or half practice, but I get on my mat every day. And every day I struggle. Every day there's resistance. Every day I'm like, bitch, why are you doing this again? You've been doing this for so long. Like, do you really need to be here? Is this something that's absolutely necessary? And I'm like, yes, it is. And you're just going to do one sun salutation, and all of that is going to quiet down. And it does. And it just organically grows from one step to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. And before you know it, you're in a moving meditation. And there's no music to distract you. There's nothing outside of you there's no cueing, because the teacher's cueing you directly. So you don't hear like a loud cueing in the space. And then it's yours, Jamie. Like, that's your practice. You don't need a teacher. You can just roll out your mat. And that was what was most beautiful during the COVID time. I had so many messages from so many of my students once the studio closed, thanking me for teaching them the practice, because they had something that they could do on their own in their house without needing prompting, needing a video. It was just theirs. You know, it's like something that you just give. It's kind of like mace. Once you know the language of the mace, you can take yourself through it. You don't really need a coach, right? It's
Hmm.
wonderful to have it, but it's an exploratory practice in that same way. So
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand how you fit into it.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm really enjoying hearing you talk from a teaching point of view and like a teacher coach point of view because I haven't been in a class with you. I've never been on the other side of the mat with you or anything like that. So I'm very much enjoying this. You're glowing.
Oh, thank you. Trying to get
So,
close to the screen again.
right. So, um, like kind of digging into that practice a little bit more. Well, so we'll say this, right? You said a really important word. You said resistance, right? And have you ever read the book, The War of Art?
The art of war.
No, no, not The Art of War.
The War of Art.
The
Yes.
War of
It's
Art.
two. There's the Chinese one. Is it Chinese Oriental?
That's The Art of War.
Yes.
The War of Art, I can't remember what his name is, but the entire book is about overcoming
Hmm.
resistance and how he characterizes resistance as this thing that stops greatness, like in everyone.
It's the enemy.
Right, and
Yeah.
it is, and we all deal with resistance in many forms, right? But I think um, having a daily practice of whatever it is, whether it's meditation, whether it's movement, whether it's some sort of ritualistic ceremonial thing, whatever it is, there is always resistance there. But once you learn the ins and outs of and the path of the practice, um, and kind of like make it your own, uh, then it's just kind of like um, it's it really is up to you against resistance daily to like conquer it. And it can be like the most subtle thing that'll just kind of like make a like resistance like makes a suggestion to you.
Yeah. Like I want cheese.
Right. It
Yeah.
starts off very simple.
That coffee sure looks good.
Right.
Really want
It's
a coffee.
it's just like this tiny little suggestion. And then it's waiting for you to go, yeah, you know what? Yeah. But the practice is like the angel on the shoulder that's like, now, Andrea, you know, at some point today, we have to bond. We have to do our thing. This is who you are. No matter what the little resistance over there is saying to you, and I know it sounds fun, it sounds delightful, and it sounds it's tickling your all of your desires right now. But and you know this when we do this, it's going to be hard. But that's who you are. It's your job to conquer me every day because that's what actually makes you you. It's not the resistance thing over there. The resistance is actually pulling you away from who you are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So eloquently said. My angel says, stop being a little bitch and just do your practice. But I love the way you put it. But we have resistance towards everything, don't we? I mean, I have a laundry monster that lives in my house. It's in a basket. I do the laundry. I put the clean clothes in the basket. Why can't I just fold the clothes when they're like out of the dryer? But, it's like I have resistance towards that. So I think that, it's kind of just bypassing that and just doing the thing, whatever the thing is. I always tell people are like, oh, yoga. I'm like, yoga is just concentration. Yoga is you connecting to your energy, to flow. If you're a painter, your paintings are yoga. If you're a guitarist and you play music, that's your yoga. If you like, to run, that's your yoga. Like it's
Mhm.
not a practice of postures, right? It's just what we've labeled this practice in the West.
Right.
But really, in the East, the postures are not the point. The postures are the opening to the deeper roots of where we're going towards, which is meditation, contemplation, which brings us to a more awakened conscious state, a more integrated beingness in our lives with the people that we love, with the world at large. And everybody in the West is really stuck on the asana portion of these practices. But with the practice that my endeavor with Ashtanga is going beyond the postures, right? Really kind of noticing that it doesn't matter how bendy you are, how proficient you are in any movement portion of it. And this actually goes across the board with all of the movement that I teach is, can you find your breathing and then the spaces between your breathing while you're moving in all of the movement practices, all of your movement endeavors, all of the things like, can you be so present with your body and your breath and you're such in a state of flow that you are like feeling your expansion on the inhales and the releasing on the exhales, and then that small suspension in that space between the two at the top and the bottom. And if you're there, then you're in an infinite moment, right? You're in flow.
Mhm.
And there's where all the downloads happen, all the expansion happens, all the creativity happens, all of the releasing happens, all of the emotions come up, clarity. And it's like this momentary thing that I capture in my practices. It's like this little moment of, okay, there I am. Like the me behind the me behind the me behind the me behind the me,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
That's when you've gotten over resistance.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's so that's what a lot of the world is missing when you get over the mountain range of resistance. You actually meet your true self. And your true self is beautiful,
Yeah.
right? It's it, it it's what's the best way I can say this? Um, I could say a whole bunch of like new agey shit, like without judgment, this, that, did it, like, but um, it just feels right. It's this feeling of everything is balanced and graceful right now, and that's it.
It's the
There's,
in the chaos.
yeah, yeah, right. So, okay, we are making great progress, right? So, let's say, all right, about maybe 10 years ago this is, you're in teaching in CrossFits and then you go to the yoga studio and then you're honing yourself more of as a teacher and teaching others to teach and whatnot, right?
Yes, more or less, yeah. So my daughter now is 16. So let's say about 13 years ago when
Okay.
I there. And then I was there for 10 years. I worked there until 2020 when everything got shut down. So I was,
Yeah, 2020 shook up the entire
yeah,
world.
that's
So,
it. Paradigm shift complete. Yeah.
yes, yes, absolutely. On so many levels, right? And oh, we got another one coming down the line too. But
Oh, oh no, I'm not ready.
no,
Where's
no,
my
no. You
woods?
are. So here's the thing. You don't know how ready you actually are. Because, well, half of the reason why we're talking tonight is because I view you as someone who is living your true will. You are living your purpose, 100%, right? Um, and that to me is the idea of what wellness is, right? Like uh it's not like your matcha tea that you have in the morning and your morning routine and all this bullshit that it has been misconstrued about like what wellness actually is.
More like my skincare routine.
Right. These are all just tiny little things that fit into like what you do essentially, right? But at the core of it is you actually living like your purpose and what you were here to do, right? So we'll say in 2020 really shook things up, right, for everybody. And at what point was it before 2020 or was it after 2020 that you came across the steel mace?
It was before.
Okay.
2 years in 2018, I was looking, so I've always been active, right? And I was like, hey, I want to do something else, and I had been kind of like looking at kettlebells and looking at different kind of flow-based movements. And so I'm on YouTube and I put flow base lifting or something like that. I put it with weight, something with weight. And Serena popped up on my YouTube search. And I was like, look at this badass. And so I click it and she's there doing, symmetrical flow that she had put up on YouTube. And I was like, this is really awesome. I I want to I'm going to investigate this further. It piqued my curiosity. So I went on Amazon and I bought myself a 10-pound mace.
Ooh, you
Um,
started with a 10 pound.
I did, yeah.
All right.
I bought a 10-pound mace and it arrived. And I tried to copy Serena, and I quickly was humbled by the experience. And I was like, this shit is heavy. I didn't realize how heavy it was going to feel because we all think 10 pounds is so easy to push around, but we all know that it's much more challenging than it seems. And so I kind of like set it in the corner. I was like, okay, I'm going to come back to this. It challenged me. I'm going to come back to this. And it stayed there until probably about the end of 2019, the end of 2019, I'm going to say. And I was like, I want to begin working with this. Like I kept seeing it there. It was like calling to me, I was like, there's the mace, like I want to learn how to work with this. And I kind of did a couple of things in my backyard, thinking that I knew what I was doing. And then I realized I'm like, I can't learn this thing on YouTube. Like I really need to find a teacher. And so I searched locally and I found someone that was pushing it around and that had done a certification, I think at the beginning of 2019, here in Miami with your whole crew. I'm not sure if you were at this one, the first one that they
I
did.
haven't been to Miami yet.
Haven't been. Okay. Yet.
Yet.
You say that.
Yet.
I thought you say that. So I was like intrigued and I went there and I learned a little bit more about it and then COVID hit. And so COVID hit, and I was like hell bent on continuing with this because it spoke to me. It was much more free than my yoga practice. And that's what I was seeking. Like I wanted to break out of this very regimented movement form, which I loved and it brought so much to me, but I wanted to be more expressive. I wanted to be more creative. I wanted to do something where I could create myself and then show others how to create with. And so then it kind of started my journey. That's what really began the journey, was just that wanting to explore. And you were the first person that told me that I would find my free flow. It was so hard for me to find free flow because I was so stuck in that regimented space. You know, um, I remember like being frustrated and you telling me, you're going to find your free flow. And then I posted my first free flow and you were like, that looks like free flow or something to that effect. I was like, oh yeah, I guess it is kind of free flow. It looked like repetitive movement to me, but it wasn't symmetrical. So yeah, it fit that box. Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay. So here's the thing. The word flow to me, it's a beautiful word, right? It means something very beautiful. Um, the problem is that word got hijacked quite a bit. And it's a shame because what really exists is your practice, right? Without your practice, the flow doesn't happen, right? So I knew that you would pick up enough patterns and you would make enough like regimented patterns that were that you would find yourself in and kind of find a home in, that at one point you would go, well, wait a minute, if I just cut half of this one off and put this one on, I need to figure out how to link those two. And at that point, that's where you're going to find that moment of what we call like free flow, right? And that's exactly kind of what happens, right? It's this pattern that I would see with most people learning steel mace. And I I would always kind of say like, the most important thing is just learning the basics very, very, very well to the point where you don't think about the basics. The basics just happen. So while the basics are happening, then you can start to kind of tune into, well, what else is there? And that's where the curiosity comes from of, well, what else can I explore with what I know? And boom, before you know it, you're shredding a mace, you know?
The
But
way that
no, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say that when people ask me, when my students ask me, how do you get to that state of free flow? And I say, well, like when you're first starting, it's like learning your ABCs, right? You're learning how to write words, and then you're learning the meanings of those words. And eventually you learn enough words that you can write your own story. You have enough of the language down that you can actually create your own story with it. But you have to be able to learn the language first. And I'm not talking about the language of the cueing or the landmarks or the steps or any of that. It's learning the positions and how the mace moves around you and the amount of proprioception that you have and how you feel within it, the blueprint. And then from there, you can expand that and create your own blueprint because you have enough of that pattern, like you said, enough of that baseline to kind of pull the energy from to create that free flow.
Mhm. And a, a part of me, a part of how I came to realize what I did with everything with the mace was it was very similar to playing guitar, um, and creating music because, you would learn your patterns on the guitar neck and like where everything fits and like how to make things sound happy, how to make things sound sad, how to build tension, yada yada yada. And I just saw the same thing with the mace, right? But the thing was, I understood how to practice guitar. I understood the things that you do, the basic things that you do to make your process better, which is like, practicing with a metronome, doing basic scales, finger exercises, things of that nature. So when you actually sit down to play and write music, it comes out very neat, very precise, and just it seems effortless. And I approached practicing mace in very much the same way. And um, the from doing that, like I said, from seeing it from that perspective, I saw where everybody was eventually going to see there's the pattern, and now I'm free, right? And that day when I said like you are absolutely going to find your free flow because you're a good mover. Like you were a good mover before you had a mace in your hands. Like you could see like you are your central nervous system is very attuned to being inside of your meat suit, where some people's aren't, right? So I knew for you it was just a matter of time, and you also had, it still have, this fire about like doing stuff, right? So it's just like, oh, this is, when this catches flame, it's going to be an inferno, and it still is, like I look back, was it last year? I can't remember if it was last year or the year before that, where you did like 300 days of flow or 100 days of flow,
So
right?
I did 2 years in a row,
Yeah.
and that's actually what exploded my free flow because much like my yoga practice, I took on this endeavor. I was like, I'm going to do 100 days straight of free flow. I'm like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to set it up so I can't bitch out on it, right? Like the resistance is going to come. Life is going to get in the way. So what are the rules of this endeavor? So I created this like challenge for myself. I'm like, actually, I lie. It was because of Hawk, Rebecca. So we were all chatting and she says, I'm having a hard time with my discipline. And I'm like, okay. well, let's all like rally around one another. Let's create a challenge. So it was Joelle, Rebecca, myself, Anna, and I don't know if Lee was in on it at the time. She might have been for the first round. And we're all like, okay, we're all going to rally and we're all going to do this challenge together as like, the women of Steel Mace Flow. We're going to make it so that we can't make excuses. It's you pick up your mace for 5 minutes a day, no matter what happens, whether it's just switches, whether it's 360s, whether you just hold it, just pick it up. The accountability is you have to record and post. So if you don't post every day and record yourself every day, then it didn't happen, right? Because then you're like you're being accountable to your peers. And so we started this, we actually started to like rally around one another to like create this discipline with ourselves. And so I really was excited about this because it was very much like my yoga discipline. Like you show up, you just show up and you do it. And I was like, I didn't want to record myself every day. That's the hardest part. Like getting my mace and flowing outside wasn't challenging. What was challenging was putting the phone, the resistance comes in funny ways, like putting the phone, pressing the record, looking through the content, picking out the thing, putting it online, all of this stuff, right? And like that whole process was the process that we all felt very encumbered by, but it was like this was the challenge. And so the first year that I did it, I was hell bent on finishing. I'm like, there's no way that I'm not going to do 100 days. Like I'm going to show up every single day. And I did it. And what I noticed in that first year of doing it was, and I look back at the videos, I have them all there from the first day until the last 100th day. My practice exploded in those 100 days because every day I was creating a pattern. Every day I was meeting myself with my mace. It didn't matter if I was sick. It didn't matter if it was raining. It didn't matter if like my kids were being dramatic that day, if I had had an argument, nothing got in the way of that. I was going to show up for that 5 minutes, which turned into way more than 5 minutes every single time. And I really benefited from that challenge, that practice, that discipline, just like my yoga practice. And so it's like habits, like habits are important. Bad habits are bad. Good habits are good,
Yeah,
It's still a habit. Like if I eat ice cream every night, I'm going to probably not be very healthy, right?
right.
So it's a habit. You can label it whatever you want, but it's a habit. And so like we look at these things and we say, well, for everything that I do, how can I create this um habit where it's no longer really a choice. It's just something that I do. It's just this is the way I show up. This is what I am doing. And I really, really feel like that was probably one of the best things that I ever did with regards to the mace was taking those 100 days straight. And then the following year, I did it again.
Hmm.
I was like, I'm going to do it back to back. And I did it again. And I was really proud because I did it both times and I didn't miss one day. And last year it was totally different because last year it wasn't about expanding my free flow in the same way. It was about the measurement of life that happened in those 100 days.
Hmm.
It really plugged me into what was happening in my life in those 100 days. I got really sick. I had a lot of drama in my life. I had situations that were extremely challenging. I traveled. There was so many things that could have been like, you know what? You forget about this. I'm not going to do this. Like, what? I don't have anything to prove, but I did it anyway. And so I look at those free flows and I see all of those things that I overcame in
Hmm.
those I had that measured time that I was and I'm like, what astounded me the most? I think how quickly things happen. And because we're all kind of asleep at the wheel in these schedules, we don't realize that we're constantly shifting and overcoming and expanding and retracting. And it's like this just life, we're radiating through life in a way.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
because we feel like we're on this, like you wake up at a certain time, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. You're kind of like asleep at the wheel. But when you have a movement practice that you have to do and you have to be in your body to do it, you're in a place where you're feeling things, you're thinking things, you are processing, you're processing. And so it's
Hmm.
like, God, I remember how I was feeling in that moment. That was really hard. And had I not done that, I probably wouldn't remember how challenged I was in that moment, right? Because it was something that I had to do aside. I had to put that challenge aside, or I had to be really within it. And I had
Hmm.
to really feel it. And I had to be like, this is hard. Like, I don't want to be here right now. I'm swinging this mace. I don't
Yeah.
really. do this recording. I don't want to show up on fucking Instagram. Like, fuck that. Like, I don't want to do that. And I was like, you know what, bitch, you're going to do it. And it is hard and you're going to do it anyway. And so it kind of like shows me my resilience, right? Like, no matter what, all of us go through hard times. All of us have challenges and we all overcome. We all, otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be having this conversation right now.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of like, I feel like that's what movement highlights in our lives. It's the ability to be really present with life and be really present in our bodies, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the heinous, the shadow, the light, all of this stuff. Because what are we here for if it isn't to feel all of these things? Like humanity and human experience is about the multifaceted experience. It's not about, this is why society suffers so much, because everyone wants to just feel good all the time. This is impossible. Hermetic
Right.
law says no. Hermetic law says the pendulum swings from one side to the other.
Yes, it
So you're on
does.
for the ride. You're on for the ride.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So I want to talk about the workshops that you do, right? Um,
Micro experiences.
yeah. Let's talk about the micro experience you just did.
So,
What can someone expect from a micro experience?
oh my God, it's so awesome. So, a micro experience. So Jeffrey Oakes and I, we do once a year. Hopefully, it'll grow into more than once a year. We do retreats, movement retreats for everyone. I don't want to say it's just for movers because really we want to open the scope up for all peoples that want to kind of start to explore themselves within movement, within meditation, within breath work, within presence, within exposures to things that cause resistance. And how can we meet against this resistance, right? So it's like we're pushing people so that they can excavate within and start to kind of like, internalize and see themselves in a different way. And we put together these workshops, I want to say like once a quarter to give people a small sample of what it would be like to be with us over 4 or 5 days. So it's like this little sampling, this little micro experience. It's like, you take a little micro dose, you feel things, but you won't feel it like if you take a hero's journey dose. So we want to
Mhm.
give that little sense of what it would be like to be with us over a long period of time. So we take people through the movement modalities that we're going to teach, and every time it's something different. We also go through a really beautiful breath work because that's really what kind of integrates and opens people up. And sound bath, vibration is like we are vibration. So it's like really reverberating the movement practice and the ideas and the mindset work. And it just kind of congeals everything together. And so when we put these workshops together, it's to give clients a small taste of what they can expect on a larger scale at one of our retreats. So it's kind of a sampling, like a little hors d'oeuvre tray before the big dinner, a big feast, if you were to join us.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
you
Hell,
too.
I would have came if I had the vacation time.
I know. You will. I know you will.
Yeah, um I'm in a different place at this moment in time, but it's okay. Um, because it opened me up to do this, which is really important to me. Hearing people's stories and giving people a chance to talk, um, and be heard. Because um, that's how I get inspired. That's how, um, I found my way through all the bullshit by listening to people like the conversation that we're having right now and, seeing myself in them and everything like that. Right. So I, but it's, we've kind of brought you to the present day, which is, it's kind of amazing. Like the journey you've had up until this point and how you've molded Well, so one other thing. You adopted Animal Flow as well.
I did.
At what point was Animal Flow before or after the mace?
It was after. So
Oh.
I got certified with Steel Mace Flow in 2021,
Hmm.
and I certified with Animal Flow last year. So with Animal Flow, it was another curiosity. It was something that I saw that I was like, that's so fucking cool. Like,
Hmm.
I can move like that. I want to play. To me, it looks like adult play. Like when I see people moving either with the mace or, an animal flow or like Budokan yoga, all of these beautiful movement modalities that are very expressive. They're very expressive, and you can see almost kind of like the source energy in the individual when they're moving. It's like this beautiful, like we are so source energy when we're children, right? Like we just came from that place. So we're very connected to that source energy. As we live in these bodies over time, we are more disconnected, but the purpose is to stay connected to that source energy throughout our lives. And so when I would watch people do animal flow, um, I was very intrigued by like that play, like low to the ground, kind of prowling, creating shapes without the necessity of anything but the human body as a locomotive endeavor. And I was like, you know what, this is something that I really want to do. And so I decided that I was going to get certified. I actually talked to Jeff about it. I'm like, hey, like I want to do this. He's like, hey, me too. So we went and we did it, and it was so much fun. We had such a good time. And I think that that movement practice has really expanded. It's interesting. Like now that I think about it, I'm talking with you. Animal Flow created this, it was like the glue to everything, right?
Really?
Created it, yeah, because what it did was it's very much the element that I was missing to start to build really interesting prescribed movement practices that incorporated quadrupedal movement along with mixed mobility, along with loaded flow forms, along with yoga forms for my clients.
Hmm.
And so the understanding of that movement modality in a very basic way, because I'm still really learning that them. I feel like I'm always learning. Like I feel like that never stops. I always feel like I'm a junior in all of my practices, but um, it kind of brought together everything. Kind of was like that through line. That was like, like I can create something now from this. And so now what I do is I pick a little bit of everything when I move with people. I'm like, let's do a little of this, and let's do a little of this, and let's do a little of this. And it creates this amazing movement pattern in people's practices because it's not just yoga. It's not just steel mace. It's not just this. It's not, it's like I have more language so I can write more interesting stories for people when they move than
Hmm.
just like the basic language that I originally learned. Um, and I'm still really intrigued by how that practice is developing. I'm very intrigued by it. I'm very intrigued by the people who move within that practice, how incredibly worldwide it is, um, how everybody that you see moving through it looks so amazing when they move.
Yes. Yeah. I love to see multiple people do sequences of Animal Flow. It's pretty cool, you know. And like it's fucking hard. I've done it. It's really hard.
And it's fun though.
It is
Like,
fun. Yeah. It is
and
fun.
you work a 20-second, 1 minute sequence and you're winded.
Oh
You're like,
yeah.
it's hard.
Oh yeah.
And teaching it is not easy.
Oh, I
It's
bet. I bet.
very specific. But what I've learned is that it's also very healing for the body. Like my clients that have learned small portions of animal flow that have had back pain, shoulder pain, when they do activations within it, it really helps them to move. I've had people that don't get into their hips, but they've been able to get into their hips with that quadrupedal movement. So there is really something there. There's really something interesting about that movement practice. And I think it's just an awesome through line to all of the other modalities that I teach. So it's kind of like the I'm not gonna say the last ingredient because, I've started to kind of explore Budokan a lot and I'm really enjoying their mobility sequences. A lot of it is just gorgeous to watch, feels really amazing in the body. So I can't say that it's the only, like the last thing, because I feel like there's never going to be a last thing. I feel like I'll be moving until they put me in the ground, hopefully. But I feel like that's been the one that's catapulted me into being able to create something that isn't just based on yoga or steel mace, but kind of bringing everything together all at once, if that makes any sense. Like creating flow within all those practices.
It
And for
does. It does. It you know, it goes back to me like making the comparison of understanding music theory, understanding all the chords, all the modes, all the scales, positions on the neck, and then how that basic structure is the through line through all styles of music. Like if you understand this, you can understand blues, you can understand jazz, you can understand metal, you can understand funk. Like I movement is its own language, just like music. So, you could tell like the untrained eye is going to look at animal flow and somebody doing yoga and be like, something's different there. But the trained eye is going to go, oh, yeah, that's animal flow. That's yoga. And, like, so, and we understand like the, the language of those movements and how they work and, the model and everything like that. And I think you are refining something extremely beautiful to offer people that comes from years of like of passion, right? And that's kind of what people can expect from like the interactions that you and Jeff bring to these micro experiences that I know that's there, right? And it's like you get to light that fire in other people as well. And they can be like, oh, well, this is how, and then you tell them how to take care of the fire, how to like, you know, keep adding wood, keep it stoked. So it is beautiful. So let's do this because I wake up early these days.
I'm sorry.
I,
So do
hey,
I.
no,
I don't
it's
actually. I take it back.
well, I know. I'm not. I don't care which way you shake it. I am just not built for waking up at 5 a.m. There's it goes against my natural circadian rhythm. And uh I've had work take me through all hours. And um when I was like slinging drinks behind the bar, I wouldn't get home until like 3:30 most of the time. And I'd wake up at like 11 or noon and then, go about my day and do my thing. But I didn't feel like quite as zombified as I do doing the hours that I do now. But the important thing is I still find time for my movement um, daily, even if it's just doing mobility, even if it's just doing like my joints and stuff like that. I still do it. I because there was you were there. You were at the first League of Steel workshop where I was in the most pain that I've ever experienced with any sort of like physical ailment. And it was like, it was really tough because uh, I had all this knowledge about how to heal myself and I was doing all the things. And it was just like, none of this is working. Oh my God, what is happening right now? Right. And the simple thing was, I just had to change the way that I was sleeping. It's really what it's really what it came down to.
When people tell me they have pain, the first thing I say is check your pillows, check your mattress, you know?
Check the way that you sleep, how your spine is aligned when you sleep, and do you hydrate enough during the day?
Right.
Those three things right there um, can save a lot of back problems in people.
So
But
you got to put down in the notes section at this marker, if you skip all the bullshit, the most important part of this conversation happens at this point in time.
right,
Make sure you're straight when you're sleeping and hydrate, Your life will be forever changed.
it's true, it's true. But it like that moment in time uh was extremely humbling because I'd never had anything like that just completely was debilitating. I couldn't sleep, was literally could not sleep because the nerve pain was so intense that it was just like but uh when I finally got through that, um it made me appreciate just to be able to move pain free again. And just to be able to have, if I could only do 10 minutes of joint rotations that day, if that's all I had time to do, then
Then
that's all I have time to do. And I'm going to be thankful that I'm doing it without any pain happening.
absolutely,
All right.
absolutely.
So we are definitely going to have you on again because what I would like to do is I would like to uh I'd like to do this again before you're gonna do a retreat. So then, we can do like a uh, little preview of
Okay.
what people can expect.
Sounds great.
But thank you so much,
Thank you, Jamie.
Dragoness. It is a pleasure to hear your story and see you talk about your story.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate it. I was like so humbled when you asked me. I'm like, oh man, do you really want to hear about my story? Like, what
I
is it?
absolutely do. And I'm gonna dig in even more at some other point. But I kind of have to digest this first because I'll digest this and it'll just create more questions,
Yeah.
after I do it. So I'm going to hit end